All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome. Glad you could come with us this morning, and welcome to all our families who are tuning in or watching. We want to make sure over the next few weeks before we start school that we make sure to update our families about the progress we're making in preparing for the school year. We know that 3 weeks from yesterday, 20 days from today, we will start the 2020-2021 school year. And we know it's going to look very different than it's ever looked before. 2 weeks ago, just a little over 2 weeks ago, we had our board meeting where our board made the decision that we would start remotely with non-traditional instruction. And we had a press conference a few days before that, as you remember, and I think everyone knows the difficult decision that had to be made. And, you know, looking back on it, we're confident we're making the right decision on this one. Many districts have followed us since that time. We started in our planning process with the guiding principle being safety and health of our students and staff, and we are going to stick with that. And our decisions that we make along the way are all going to be about making sure guiding principle number one is safety and health. And I think a lot of districts across the Commonwealth and the nation are coming to terms with that as well. So we will continue to do that as we move forward. I will miss the first day of school. There is nothing like the excitement. When you're in education, the excitement of the opening of school. So usually from August 1st to about August 15th, you can feel the energy in this building. You can feel the energy across the district and in our schools. We're doing things like having orientations in person back at school. We have a administrator kickoff every year. That's usually my favorite event, where I get to get up and talk to all the administrators for a good amount of time, and there's just a lot of excitement. And so we're definitely going to miss that. I'm going to miss the first day of school, having the media follow us around and be in schools. And over the past few years, I've been in 8, 9 schools to start the school year. And we talked last night. We're going to unfortunately not be able to be in person as we open up our brand new Grace James Academy. That innovative school that is the sister school to W.E.B. Du Bois Academy. And so we're going to do everything we can to celebrate our kids, celebrate our staff, and make sure that we have the enthusiasm to start the year. Thanks to our board, we are also having 2 weeks of professional development for our teachers beginning next Monday. So we have our accelerated improvement school teachers working right now. But on next Monday, all of our staff will be back. And we are having those 2 full weeks of professional development with our staff and teachers, making sure that they have the capacity and skills ready to teach in a non-traditional way and in a remote way. And I think that's going to be so important for our teachers and our staff, and also so that we have time to reach out to families and provide the support that they need prior to starting school on the 25th. I want to reiterate once again, there's nothing more than I want than to have our kids back in school. That's why we get into this profession, to meet the needs of our kids, to see them every day. And we want to be back in school as quickly as we possibly can. Once again, we know that the first 6 weeks will be in non-traditional instruction, at least the first 6 weeks. At the end of September, we will take a look at the data. We will look at the data around the number of cases in our community. Clearly, we'll look at the percentage of positive rate, which is high in Jefferson County right now. We'll look at cases in children. And in collaboration with the health department, the state, and our Board of Education, we'll be making a decision about how we move forward from that point on. But once again, we do want to say as quickly as possible, we want to get our kids back in school. But falling back on that principle of safety and health is so important. In the past 2 weeks, the central office team here has worked extremely hard. Teams are working around the clock to make sure that we provide NTI 2.0 as a very positive experience, the best possible experience we can provide to students and families as we move forward. As I said at the last time I was up here, we were proud of the work we did in the spring, but we know it's got to be much better now as we move into NTI 2.0, and you'll hear about some of those things as we move forward. It is important, too, that I recognize the work of our school teams, our school leadership teams, our principals, assistant principals, and counselors, leadership teams that are working so hard right now at schools. We put a lot on them. I will acknowledge that. We have put a lot on our schools to make sure that they have effective plans in place in many areas around curriculum, training of teachers, professional development, getting devices, Chromebooks and hotspots out to the families that need those, and really to prepare orientations and really build the energy as much as possible. So I have to recognize our school teams and how much they are putting into this. Thank you to all of our schools for the hard work that you are putting into this to make as the best possible experience for our students and our families. And so as we begin, I'm really going to encourage our families in the next couple of weeks to make sure to begin to start preparing for NTI 2.0. Please visit the website, our JCPS website. We are launching our NTI 2.0 page today, our website. I think you see it right behind me right now. And it's going to walk families through all the things that they need to do by August 25th, the first day of classes. We know our schools are going to be in contact with families and give a lot of school-specific information to families about virtual orientations, picking up supplies and items from schools, and all the important things that they need to do with individual schools. But the one-stop shop is the website, so I'd really encourage our families to go visit that website. You'll learn more about NTI 2.0, registration, supports available for families, and how to update contact information. Also request a device for families, and you're going to get more information that will be launched next week, next Monday, how families can get on that website and request a device. I do want to make sure that I reiterate this a couple times. It is so important to our families that you go on this website and update your contact information. It's very important as we reach out to children and families, and we're in a remote setting, that we have the most up-to-date contact information for our families that includes emails and phone numbers up to date. That's going to be so critical for our school staff to be able to contact families. I did that this morning. Obviously, I'm a dad, wanted to make sure that we had the right contact information. It was correct, but we want to make sure all our families do that. So as soon as possible, families, please make sure you update that contact information and so that we can contact you. Our goal in NTI 2.0 is to make sure that every family has that device and that Chromebook, and we've talked a lot about that. We gave out 20,000 devices in the spring, and we want those students that had that, please hang on to that device, use that. Hopefully you use that in the summer in our virtual summer learning. We want you to hang on to those. So there's 20,000 devices that kids have, and we have another 30,000 that we're ready to deploy immediately. And we're also obviously working with hotspots to support our families who need internet access. We only ask those families that truly need that internet access, that don't have that or don't have a device, to make sure that you request one. But if you have one, please make sure to use that. We want to make sure we are able to give all of our children that need this the opportunity to have a device, a laptop, a Chromebook, and internet connectivity. So I am going to bring up our Chief Information Officer, Dr. Kermit Belcher. His team has been working extremely hard to make sure we have a great platform. We have all the supports that family needs, that we're implementing a new system for our staff and so that they can contact families through the cloud. So a lot of improvements are being worked on right now at Central Office to make sure that schools have the tools that they need, students have laptop devices, and that they also have connectivity. And so I'd like to at this time introduce Dr. Kermit Belcher.
Thank you, Dr. Polio. In the spring, our determined team at JCPS worked overtime to ensure more than 20,000 devices and hundreds of Wi-Fi hotspots reached our families in need of a Chromebook or internet access. It was truly a team effort and great to see how people across various departments all came together. For NTI 2.0, we're going to do this again. We're making the process even easier to request assistance. All families in need of a device can request one. The link to request a device will be available on our website for families to complete Monday morning at 9 a.m. The form will walk families through a short series of questions. Families will need to be able to access this from their cell phone or a web-based device. Families need to include an email address or phone number that matches our district records to validate the request. Our schools will be distributing the devices to best match the individual needs for our students. Families will be hearing from their student school in the next few weeks regarding the device. If a family does not have internet access, they can call the school or our call center at 313-HELP to complete the request form. Families can also request access to the Wi-Fi hotspot through the same request form, the same link on our website. We don't want internet connectivity to be a barrier for any of our students during this NTI 2.0 process. We have 10,000 hotspots that students can use with their district instructional device. Hotspots are a right now solution. Through collaboration with community partners like Evolve 502, we're working on a long-term plan that is sustainable to connect families with the internet. As we work to make NTI 2.0 more robust for students, we will be providing multiple devices to households with more than one student if there is a need. We anticipate providing the same number of devices that we did in the spring to the students. If your family already has a device and you don't need internet access, we ask that you not request a device, ensure we have enough for all students who are truly in need. We are proud to be able to offer this level of support to our families. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Dr. Belcher. So I want to reiterate a couple of important points. First of all, families can access the request form online beginning next Monday at 9 a.m. And also call 313-HELP. So if they don't have that access to the internet connectivity or a device that they can request that, you can call 313-HELP. Also call your school is a way to access that as well. And we'd ask families to have patience with us, especially on the 313 helpline. We will have a lot of callers calling in. We're increasing the amount of support we have to answer those. But as families can imagine, with the amount of families we have in JCPS, please have patience with us in this. And once again, just like in the spring, this is a new process for us all. There are not easy answers to many of the challenges we face. But we are tackling them. We're leaning into them. We're working to get families all the supports they need. But once again, sometimes we will require some patience to do that. I also want to reiterate, as I've talked about many times, I think it's important as a community, a state, and a nation, we understand the challenge with the digital divide. Once again, about 30% of families in JCPS, the students do not have a device or connectivity to the internet. And we are meeting the needs of our families, and so many districts across the state and nation are doing the same thing. But these are short-term solutions. We're going to all have to work together to make sure we find ways so that all students have access to connectivity and to a device. And it goes beyond a pandemic. One of the things that this has shown us is that when we get back to regular school, and we will get back to it, it's not going to be the same world. And students having access to a device and a connectivity, what this has done is it's really shined a light on the need for this and how we can do things better when we come back to school when students have connectivity and a device. And so we're working with community partners to find a long-term solution to break down that digital divide. And we appreciate all those organizations who are working with us on that. And so once again, it's important that I reiterate to all families, I'm going to say it again, visit our website, update your contact information. So important that we have those updated phone numbers. In the spring, that's one of the things we found that was difficult for schools when they didn't have updated contact information, phone information, emails. It became very difficult to contact families. So please help us and assist us in that. Make sure you go check and you have the most up-to-date contact information, specifically with emails and phone numbers to contact families. That's going to be very important as we move into NTI 2.0. We've done a lot of work with curriculum. We know we want to make NTI 2.0 more active for families, more daily contact, more live classes, which many call synchronous. We still want flexibility for our staff. and our families. We know that's the need out there. We have families who are working. We have teachers who are at home with their own children. So there's always going to have to be flexibility with this, but we do want to provide more live classroom instruction for our students. And I'd like to bring up Dr. Carmen Coleman, Chief Academic Officer, who's going to update some of the things we're doing around instruction and curriculum. Dr. Coleman?
Yeah, thank you. So I've always been a big believer in new ways to approach teaching and learning, and NTI has certainly challenged us all to think about new ways to approach school. Our schools are hard at work personalizing NTI for our students, and while I know teachers wish they were back in their classrooms getting ready for the first day of school, they'll be preparing their Google Classrooms to make online learning interactive and engaging. Our teachers will be using Google Classroom once again for NTI 2.0. It's the same platform used in the spring that students and families are familiar with. This is the online portal behind me that will be available soon for families to access their online classrooms. The platform may be the same, but the experience will be very different this time around, with much more live instruction in addition to engaging coursework. Families can expect to see clear guidelines and have a better understanding of the expectations throughout NTI with a consistent weekly schedule. The recommended curriculum includes programs that are individualized and include project-based learning as well as opportunities to collaborate with peers. Students will have access to innovative digital resources that bridge the gap between in-person instruction and learning from home. Students will also have access to digital books with activities that will engage and empower our readers. Those lessons include study activities, comprehension strategies, and guided writing. A more structured school day can be expected in NTI 2.0, but it is not our goal for students to be sitting in front of a computer all day. We want to spark learning and creativity in this virtual space. While there will be more structure, we are also going to continue to be flexible so that we can be there for our families. Communication will also be enhanced during NTI 2.0. Families will see more frequent and ongoing communication from their schools and teachers. There will be more opportunities for virtual orientations and parent-teacher conferences. We'll be sharing lots more information about incoming virtual town halls as a support tool for families in addition to video resources about how to navigate NTI 2.0. We'll be sharing more in the coming weeks about NTI 2.0 and all of the resources that will be available to families and community partners. This is certainly a different start to the school year, but we are here for our students, families, and staff. Dr. Polio.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman. So just to wrap up a few points before we take some questions, any questions that anybody has. We've got a lot of work still to do. So this has been the work that we've done. Early on we were expecting that we might go back to NTI 2.0 in May, but as I said before, we were like everyone else thinking that it might be a second wave that hits in late fall, early winter. So we've been working on NTI 2.0 since May because we were following along and thinking that was going to happen as cases dipped dramatically in the summer. That's what we were thinking. But as we all know, that has not happened. Even in June and July, those numbers have increased. So we're watching those closely. But over the past 2 weeks, we've done an extraordinary amount of work. I want to commend our board for making this decision in a timely fashion so that we could have these weeks to prepare. Our schools are having to do a great amount of work to prepare, and once again, thanks to our principals, our leaders, for all of this work. But by making this decision early, in a timely fashion, we've been able to do a lot of this work and get ready and have our schools get ready, make sure we have devices and hotspots and all of those things. So thank you to our board for making that decision with enough time to do it. Thanks again to our schools working so hard to do this, and we appreciate our families. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from our families about our concerns about safety and health of our students, our staff, and our families at home. And once again, that's our number one guiding principle, and we're going to stick to that because that's important. I said a few weeks back that any sickness or even death caused by COVID-19 as a result of a decision we make, any number over 0 for that is just unacceptable. So we want our kids back in schools as quickly as possible. That's our goal. We're going to do everything to support learning, but we want to make sure that we support safety and health. Finally, once again, one last time, parents, it's so important. Please make sure to go to our website, check that out today. Check out the resources that we have available. Most importantly, make sure your contact information is up to date. If there's any support you need, please call your school or 313-HELP. And once again, next Monday morning at 9 a.m., we'll launch the opportunity for families to request the hotspots or the Chromebook so that they have connectivity. We appreciate everybody being here. We'll continue to update over the next couple weeks. We're going to build as much excitement as we can for the first day of school. I'm going to miss being out in those schools, especially opening up the new school. There's nothing better than opening up a new school. This will be the 3rd new school we've had the opportunity to open up since I've been superintendent. So that's pretty exciting, and we got some more to come with some new buildings in the next couple of years. So we're going to do everything we can to celebrate those and build excitement, and look forward to showing off some of those things, and then doing the best we can to have a lot of energy on the opening of school. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Kevin's up here.
Mark's going to get his steps in today. You guys were expecting to spend $8.2 million on 30,000 Chromebooks. But in the CARES Act funding presentation that you presented to the board, it only listed $1.4 million for 6,000 hotspots for 9 months. Then last night we heard that contract's being extended for a year, and there's 10,000 hotspots that are going to be available. So I guess what's the final price tag on the hotspots that are going to be available to families?
The 10,000, what was the total on the 10,000?
$20 a month per device. So
The total was, what was the total? We'll get you that exact figure. Let us make sure we get that exact figure. So we wanted to make sure, obviously, our PPE, when we were looking at the amount of PPE, face masks and things that we would have to provide for kids, that number has gone down since that time, since we will not be back in school. We know whenever we return, I think PPE, masks, thermometers, all of those things are still going to be a reality in schools at some point. So we know we're going to have to spend a lot on PPE, but we definitely moved more towards the Chromebook and hotspots on expenses once we went to NTI to start the year. But I'll make sure you get that exact figure.
And one quick follow-up. I asked this last week, but have you got any sort of handle on how many Chromebooks that have already been distributed but lost during the spring?
we haven't attempted to collect any Chromebooks yet.
Yeah, so we haven't collected, no, so we don't. We'll see. We are tracking anyone who requests a second time. We will follow up with those families to find out what happened to it. So until we collect them back, we wouldn't have that number. We know that we will probably lose some of those, some not working or broken, but the vast majority of them we think families still have. And obviously when we collect these back, we'll have a real clear figure of how many were returned. Bottom line for us, though, right now is to support our families and to get kids access to Chromebooks and internet. That's number one, and we got to do whatever it is to get these devices to our families.
Dr. Pulley, this could be for Dr. Coleman as well. Any update on accommodations for families with special needs and how they fit into this robust 2.0?
Yeah, so I'll start it, and if Dr. Coleman wants to add, we don't have our chief of ECE here, Kim Chevalier, but I'll start that. First of all, I think real important is to make sure all of our families, we want all of them to have connectivity and a device. But when it comes to special education services, there is no doubt that is critical. So many of those services are going to be provided virtually because we can't provide those in person. So we're looking at ways to make sure that every family that if they have a special needs child, that they make sure to get online and request that device if they need it, so that we can provide those services to our kids. Secondly, we are exploring, I said last night, opportunities on learning hubs. This would be for all students, not just special need, and it would be voluntary, but having some opportunity in small numbers with great spacing, social distancing between kids in very small numbers, that we could look to provide services. All of that will be dependent upon the health situation, that the numbers and what the status of COVID-19 is as we move into September. But those are a couple things. I'll let Dr. Coleman, if you have anything you'd like to add.
So I'll just add a couple things. One is, it's important to know that our responsibility for supporting our students with special needs doesn't change in the virtual environment. So we are still responsible for providing all those modifications and accommodations just as if we were in school, and we are working hard to be able to do that, and we will. The other thing that I will say is that, yes, to reiterate Dr. Polio's point, absolutely, every student needs a device and access, but also our schools will be working together in the next couple weeks to decide what other kinds of resources or materials our students might need, and they'll be working with families to distribute those in the next few weeks.
This might be a question for Dr. Belcher, and this is coming from Mark Vanderhoff at WLKY. He wants to know if you can walk through the process from start to finish about the Chromebook distribution. In other words, how do, from the time families go online and apply, how do they get notified, and how long will it be before they get a notification, and then how do they pick them up?
Sure, that's a great question. So once the website goes live on Monday, the link for the request form, you would go to the website and click on the link, and you would fill out the questions. The families could fill that out, and then the request is submitted to the school. Then the school gets the request. They would assign a device in advance to the student. Then each school has their own process, and they would contact the individual. It'll be probably a week from once they put the request in, so each school would reach out to that student once that goes into the request. So one of the beauty of the request is to be able to have that electronically. And also we have the support of calling, like Dr. Polio said, the school or 313-HELP to help some put the request in. But the inventory and everything goes through that online request form.
And then how would the student get the Chromebook?
Again, that distribution is up individually to each school. So we are working with the schools to have recommendations, and those recommendations will be shared with the schools, and then the schools will share those with the families. But that could be something as like a drive up to pick those up to where they could pick those up in that fashion. But each school will have their own plan for that.
This question's for Dr. Polio. With regards to fall sports, has there been any guidance yet, or any discussion about the possibility of fans in the stands and what policies they might have to follow if they are allowed to be there?
Well, I'm not even sure we're at the point yet, fans in the stands or having sports. I mean, that's I think it was clear last night at our board meeting, the concern around athletics at this point. That's something that we have to continue to discuss. So we are following the KHSAA. The Board of Control last week, as you know, pushed that back 3 weeks. I believe August 24th is the first date for any practice that could occur. September 7th, I believe, is the date for all sports except for football as the first contest. September 11th is the first date for a football contest. However, once again, our guiding principle is safety and health. And as a former coach and athletic director, I understand the importance of athletics. I know that. Kids participating, we know what that does for health, camaraderie with peers, and all the opportunities that athletics brings to kids. So I think all of our board is really interested in doing everything we can to provide those opportunities for kids. But once again, we're going to have to monitor the data over the next 2 weeks. We're going to have a conversation at the 18th, the board meeting on the 18th, a little bit deeper than we did last night to discuss that. The Board of Control of the KHSAA is coming back together on the 20th, and then some decisions will be made at that point. I mean, I think we're going to have to see a lot moving forward. I think college athletics are even in question at this point. And so, these are athletics where testing can occur on a daily basis. We don't have the capacity to do that. So we're going to continue to monitor. We want to give every opportunity for our athletics to participate, but we also have to make sure that we focus on safety and health of the student athletes, the coaches, the parents. So there's a lot of decisions to be made before we get into anything around whether crowds would be allowed at games or not.
We have a question from Mark Vanderhoff with WLKY, and I think it's a question for Dr. Belcher. What support will be provided for parents and students when Chromebooks and hotspots don't work?
Also on our website, there's a place where you can click on for virtual support, and it asks, are you a JCPS employee or are you a JCPS family? And there are links there to put in a ticket request. There are links for virtual chat, interaction for virtual meetings. So there are different types of support through that website. Also, there's a phone number to call if you need technical support, and those protocols are in place. So that would be the best central location, is to go to the website for that information.
In addition to the hubs that you were alluding to and Dr. Coleman was alluding to, we've seen some posts from parents offering their own homes to pool resources, not only for NTI, but for work from home. Is that something that you would either encourage or discourage? Would that mess up the structure of the learning, or is that something that you see as innovative?
I mean, I think that's a family decision to be made. I mean, I would encourage all families to continue to follow guidelines around groups, social distance, all the recommendations. So bringing a large number together, I think increases the risk at any point. So I would encourage that. But I mean, we're working with partners as well, like churches and community centers who are interested in supporting. One of the very positive things that I've seen in this community, and probably across the nation, but I can say in this community, are the amount of people and organizations who have stepped up and said, how can we help? And so that's churches, community centers, nonprofits, who I think are all looking at ways that they might be able to bring some kids together in small numbers, with social distance, face masks, all of those things, to support kids. And so we definitely support that. I want to say once again, it is important to follow guidelines for safety and health, and everyone should always focus on that safety and health portion of it first and foremost. But I believe anybody who steps up in our community to help children out is a positive.
Again, this could be for Dr. Polio or Dr. Belcher. Regarding the total number of devices, I think it was brought up last night, it's around, is it 80,000 possibly available for students? And obviously given the district's total population, maybe some families have concerns if all students will be able to get a Chromebook in the end. But can you again talk about that? It seems like obviously since some families already have devices, that you're confident that everybody will in fact be able to get a Chromebook and hotspot.
Yeah, we're confident everyone will be able to get that. So, we have, right at about 65,000 students who are free and reduced lunch. We have, like we said last night, 80,000 devices in the district that we can access. A large number of our middle schools, as was said last night through the Verizon Learning Grant, already have an iPad with connectivity, so that's in the thousands already. For instance, me as a parent, my daughter has a device and connectivity now, like I think a lot of people do. So we're confident we'll be able to get families the devices are needed so that they will have access to that digital learning as we begin NTI.
We have a question from Jess Clark with WFPL, and she wants to know if 30,000 purchased Chromebooks will be available by the start of school.
Is that yes, right? Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things we did early on, as I said, we were anticipating NTI 2.0 at some point. When we got CARES Act funding, we moved quickly to get 30,000 Chromebooks ordered. I believe that was either at the end of May or beginning of June, even before we decided this, to make sure that we were ready and prepared. Fortunately, those have arrived, and we're getting those to schools. But if we had not done that at an early, we might be waiting until September, October, or even later to get those devices, as many other districts around the country right now will be waiting well into the fall to get those.
The idea of adding black student unions at middle schools and high schools was brought up at the board recently. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a part of our racial equity plan. We know that along with the pandemic, there's clearly been a lot of unrest in our community around racial equity issues, and we support our students. We have seen many of our students and staff as a part of protest, and we know a lot of our students need support. And so, clearly we want to be there for our students. We want to make this a part of a curriculum. Our racial equity plan has been very clear about this. So, this is one of the supports we are looking to provide. Clearly support that in our schools. And we will continue to move forward with that racial equity plan to eliminate gaps and disproportionality. This education is, my corner and our corner that we're really looking at in the battle for racial equity. This is extremely important. It's one of our pillars that we do. And so education is so important in this work. And we're proud of the work around the racial equity plan. We've got a long way to go to eliminate those gaps, but this is one piece of it, and we're going to continue to do that work.
Obviously, NTI, the online aspect of it is going to be really critical for kids. Even with these devices, how concerned are you that there are going to be essentially two tiers of students, the students that have access to this learning platform and those that have to do it in the physical hard copy form?
Yeah, well, Kevin, I got to say again that, we have to admit that remote learning is no substitute for in-person learning. In-person learning is by far the best. The relationships and supports that teachers are able to give kids and schools are able to give kids cannot be replaced in a virtual setting. So we have to be open and honest about that. And we want to get them back as quickly as possible. That is a major concern. Another major concern is that, obviously, I just said we have achievement gaps already. And we know research shows and nationally that the remote learning can exacerbate those gaps. And so, we understand that, but that is why we are so committed to making sure families get what they need to be supported in this work. So it is our goal that every family gets one, but we're going to meet the needs of families wherever they are. But, we have to understand that. We have to know that when we get back in-person schooling, we're going to have to be very intentional about plans for supporting kids and families over multiple years to eliminate those gaps.
And on that point of getting kids back into school, what sort of health benchmarks are you looking for? Because looking back at the positivity rate in Jefferson County, it looks like it hasn't been below 6% since the pandemic began. So what are you looking for? What do you need to see after 6 weeks in order to start classes back in person?
Yeah, good question. And I get asked that question a lot about the data. And I think everybody nationally is struggling in all kinds of decisions about what data should be used. I mean, I think we heard answers from the governor yesterday around fans at the Derby. And it's tough to know what that data that makes that decision is. And so I think a lot of leaders are struggling with those benchmarks. And I know school superintendents are. I mean, I want to say this. I've had a lot of conversations with superintendents across the country and across the state of Kentucky over the past couple of months. It's a tough time to make these decisions because we want kids in school. I've said this, we want them learning, but we also are concerned about the safety and health of students and staff. And so, it's really difficult to know what data to really hone in on and look at. And clearly I'm not the only one making the decision here. I have a board, we have health officials that we collaborate with, and all of those things come into play as we look at this. But definitely we're looking at the number of cases. We need to see a decrease in that positivity rate. We know that when you get over 7%, especially in this community and other communities maybe well below 7%, but when we're above 7% and it's not dropping, that's a real concern. Also, when we are seeing more cases in young children, that's a real concern. Early on, they said that school-age children did not spread like adults, but new research is showing that 10 to 19-year-olds spread at the same rate that adults do. And nearly every school in JCPS has a 10 to 19-year-old within the school. So, I really think we're going to have to see a decrease in that positivity rate, that percentage, and the number of cases being on the decline.
So last question, again from Mark Vanderhoff of Channel 32. What actions will schools and districts take when students do not participate in NTI?
Well, once again, we do not want to be punitive in the way that we approach NTI. We know this is difficult for many families. We are going to have higher expectations for student outcomes and output during this time, and so there will be some increased accountability around grading. There is no doubt about that, but I think the most important thing we know is that at the end of this, no matter what, we have to be very intentional about ensuring that students aren't punished in a way for what happens here. And so that may require recovery efforts once we return to school. And that's what all the additional contact is about with our families. So being very intentional about contacting, doing everything possible to engage our families and students. We will have increased expectations for, as we have talked about, schools, teachers, everyone, but also for students. Measure the progress of our students. We're going to do things like provide MAP assessment for our students so we know where they are. But no matter what, the most important thing is when we get back in person school that we're providing all the interventions kids need to be successful. Thank you all. Appreciate you being here. We'll be back soon to provide updates.